Thank you, co-pilot Haley. All right. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Nikki Parr. I am the Director of Programs, Services and Strategy here at Weave, and welcome to the last Strong Women, Strong Coffee of the year. In COVID time, it feels like it's been 2 years, of course, but we started this 11 months ago in January with maybe 30 people. And now have grown to a registration of over 350. So we're really delighted by how much people have resonated with this idea of Strong Women, Strong Coffee, and the opportunity to hear from our clients and those other entrepreneurs that you can learn from, but also more importantly, to have the chance to network as well. So welcome, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, but keep muted until we get into the breakout rooms. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things that are coming up at Weave. Although everything has been so virtual this year, we actually have a couple of in-person things coming up. In December, these are limited space events. So if you're interested, we have a happy hour in Ventura on the 2nd of December and one a week later in Santa Barbara on the 9th. If you're interested in attending, it's RSVP, space is limited, but put your name and county into the email. Maybe just put happy hour as well, because you're all introducing yourself and it could get really confusing. And then one of our staff will get in touch with you and send you that invite. But it would be lovely to actually, meet in person, just instead of in this online forum. So we have that opportunity. And then the other thing to mention is the virtual Shop Local Market. So we started doing this last year. It's featuring a lot of Weave clients in one online location. So you can find a lot of the business owners that you may be familiar with and love their products, and you can go online and kind of shop directly from our website. And I think there are discount codes available as well. So definitely check that out. It'll be up for the next, I think, 3 weeks, and a great opportunity to share and support our local businesses. So let's get going. I'm so excited about this morning. Very, very excited. So our very, very special guest is Emily Barany, who is a Weave client, but more importantly, the founder and CEO of VISIONALITY. Welcome, Emily. She's celebrating her 10th year in business. And so the theme for this morning is 10 things learned in 10 years. But before we kind of get into the meat of the interview, let me just tell you about Emily, because she's amazing. She is a serial social entrepreneur who has launched half a dozen businesses aimed at making the world a better place. And in 2011, she launched VISIONALITY with a mission to help organizations dream big and a commitment to transform their dreams into reality. And what's Emily's dream? Well, she wants to be a part of something big, projects that are bigger than the people involved and causes that will change the world. That's not a lofty goal at all, is it, Emily? She's won many awards and recognitions, including the top 40 under 40 business leaders awarded by the Pacific Coast Business Times. She's been recognized by the Mayor of Los Angeles, Mayor Garcetti, for a small business, Alum of the Year for the Ventura County Leadership Academy, Innovator of the Year, Leadership Awards, Social Entrepreneur of the Year. You get the picture. This girl really is a powerhouse. And I was really interested to read about your undergrad and degrees, a major in communications, German, and a minor in philosophy. And suddenly a lot made sense about who you are as an individual and who you are in the world. She also loves agility with her best friend, Scooter, who is a dog, not a human, and baking complicated desserts to share with people she loves. Emily, it is an absolute delight to have you here. Thank you for being our guest this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to get started with obviously congratulating you on 10 years. And let's just back up a little bit. Emily wrote an article, which you can also find on her organization's website, the resource page, 10 Things I Learned in 10 Years, which I do encourage you all to check out. But one of the, I'm gonna pull out, some of these, what are they? Words of wisdom, nuggets. And number 2 on those is sometimes you've just got to leap. So that obviously speaks to a lot of people in terms of getting started. So maybe you can talk about what prompted you to get started and take the leap, and how scary was that moment?
Well, so it's interesting because I think as entrepreneurs, we have a really different relationship with risk than people who are more comfortable having a traditional job. And so what I do when I'm considering a risk is I really think through all the way to what's the worst case scenario. If I take a risk and I make it all the way to the most ridiculous level. Like if every single thing goes wrong, what's the very worst that could happen? And then I take a step back and think, what safety nets do I have to prevent that from happening? And how likely really is that if it does happen? And part of being an entrepreneur is having really strong safety nets. And so when I use that lens, nothing feels impossible. So it kind of just makes me want to leap, because it's like, well, yeah, there could be negative consequences, but let's just give it a shot. And one of the really important things about being a CEO and being an entrepreneur is you're the one in control, and you have this set of levers that you can pull. And as long as you have your basics in order and you have your key performance indicators and all those kinds of things, you should know if things are trending in the right or wrong direction. And then you have the ability to adjust course to make sure that you're achieving your overarching goal.
Right. What were some of the safety nets that were in place for you before you launched and went out on your own?
Money. So I always recommend before starting a business, you have truly 6 months of living expenses in the bank. Don't shortchange it. Truly 6 months of living expenses. If you're making scared decisions, you're not making good decisions. And you need to be in a strong financial position, have health insurance, have your family and your friends rallied around you, let them know the big risk that you're taking so that they can stand up with you and be your support system. It's really hard to start a business, and it's really lonely, and we all have bills to pay. So you need to have a strong personal financial footing before you take that leap. So that honestly was the biggest one for me. I think there's a underestimation too of what startup overhead looks like for different businesses. So I started a consulting company. So I literally just needed a computer and a place to put it. But I've seen other businesses with higher maybe inventory needs or overhead, physical infrastructure, underestimating what that really could cost in order to truly get your business fully up and operational. So just being honest and realistic, that's what Weave is so great at. I went through the Weave business plan program to really get serious about what that looks like, and making sure I structured my pricing so that it could support my startup expenses. And again, having that 6 months in the bank so that you don't need to make scared decisions. And you should be making some amount of profit after 6 months, depending on what type of business it is. But I'm not saying you need to, be paying, have everything handled in 6 months, but that's a really nice chunk of time to see if what you're trying to do has some legs.
Mm-hmm. I love that quote. If you're making scared decisions, you're not making good decisions. That so true. Yeah, when we're back up against the wall, we're probably not thinking as clearly and as strategically as we should be. One of the things that you wrote in your article is you're good at your job because you've made so many profound mistakes. And that is a part of taking a leap and taking risks and being, very realistic about sometimes they're going to go wrong and you're going to make your mistakes. So I was wondering, what has been your best mistake?
Oh, dang. I mean, I'm thinking of lots of like tactical ones of like, when I was like in the work, doing the work. And now, my position as CEO of Visionality, we've grown so much. So like, I'm not necessarily like in the weeds anymore with my team. Honestly, I think one of my biggest mistakes was a scared mistake, and I allowed our company to run as a scrappy startup for too long. And so, part of what I talk about in the article also is you just got to leap. And so, I kept seeing us as a really scrappy startup, and we were losing employees because we weren't paying enough. And I felt like we couldn't afford to pay enough. But one of the really insidious things about turnover is it doesn't show up in your P&L. It's just magically lost money. And so, we recognized the issue that we were having really high turnover. We recognized that that was costing us money. So we gave across the board 20% raises. We couldn't afford that, but we knew that was the first step in reducing turnover, which was our biggest like money hole. And so, and now, we're really leaning into this idea of being a big girl company. I'm a consulting company. I want to be like the lynda.com of consulting. I want to be the place where you want to land and spend a really long time and really grow your career and grow your skills. And the only way to do that is to have a really good compensation package to encourage people to stay around. We're also talking a lot. One of our passion projects this year is not a living wage, but we're calling it a thriving wage. Again, scared decisions aren't good decisions. And that is true as an employer and a CEO and an entrepreneur. It's also true for your employees. If your employees are worried about going to the doctor, if they feel like they can't go out to dinner without planning their budget incredibly carefully and watching their pennies, they're not going to do excellent work for you because they're focused on other things. So we're really leaning into, the larger concepts of work-life balance and a thriving wage, and tying that back. Yeah, on my balance sheet, it's costing us more money, but it's also reducing our turnover and actually improving our employee productivity because they feel safe and secure and happy and supported. And, they don't need to worry, if their car breaks down or something,
Yeah, exactly. You take care of the employees and they'll show up for you and they'll be happy in their work environment. And, once 100%. Somebody's happy in their work environment, then there's a good chance that they'll be staying. What was some of the hardest times for you, and how did you get through them? And I know you mentioned the safety nets earlier, and I also know, I just want to call out, Emily was really involved in the Thomas Fire recovery efforts in our community. I don't know if that was some of the hardest times for you, but I'm just wondering kind of, if you can share a little bit just from, I guess, from the entrepreneurial perspective.
Growth is hard. Growth is really hard. And what's interesting about leading a small company is I would have thought that after 10 years, I would really know how to do this. But with a small company, every year I have to relearn how to run this company, and I have to relearn how to make it profitable. And I have different, I keep talking about these levers. I have different levers available to pull. And so with that comes burnout, and it comes, like just kind of being a little tired once in a while. And that speaks to, a big lesson I had to learn was to treat myself as well as I treat my employees. If I burn out, what happens to them? And I deserve to be treated as well as we treat our employees. So yeah, and the pandemic was really hard. Like, let's just get that out there. It was incredibly hard. I remember during the beginning of the pandemic having to have just terrible conversations with our employees saying, I think you have a job for a week. I'll call you next week. If we have to lay you off, I'll help you fill out the paperwork. We, the week of shutdown, we redid our books to be a worst case scenario. What does it look like if we lose our largest clients? I did all those terrible phone calls, calling everybody that I paid money to saying, I can pay today. I don't know if I can pay, what are the programs we can set up? Can we go interest only? Can we whatever. And we did a great job of like being really proactive, to support your clients. But I think the pandemic really was the largest, the biggest tough time, the scariest tough time. I think it was the only time I wasn't sure we'd survive. And I think a huge piece of why we did survive, and not just survive, but really thrive. We had one of our most profitable years in 2020. We gave everyone 10% raises. Was that we had our foundation, we had our basics nailed. We, all of those pandemic programs, right? You had to have your taxes up to date. You had to have your books clean. You had to have your employees properly, as W-2 employees, not as misqualified as 1099 contractors. And it was only because we had all of our ducks in a row and we were running a super clean, super above board business, we were able to get all of those pandemic benefits. And, applying for PPP or EIDL or the county loan or whatever literally took me 15 minutes because everything was clean and it was up to date. And I have other colleagues, it took them 6 hours to apply for the same programs, or they even couldn't apply ever because they didn't have clean books, or they had no books, and they didn't have the money or the time to bring everything up to date so that they could even access that money that was available. So I think, the pandemic was rough. We did the right thing by redoing our plan to be super conservative. And because we had those foundations, we were able to accept all of the help, and just honestly, like getting my pride out of the way, like calling our company landlord to say, I don't know if I can pay my rent, was humiliating. And like, if I didn't do all those things, all of our employees might be out of a job. And so it really was just like knowing that I had to show up and do the hard things in service to my employees to help them, again, feel safe and secure. If I don't have my employees, I don't have a business. So we have to really, keep them feeling good and solid and not scared.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's so interesting about, you have to just take it on the chin, like you said, and it can be humiliating, and the telephone call you'll never think you're going to have to make to tell her, I can't pay you right now, but what can we do? What can we figure out? But that's the kind of responsibility that you have as a business owner, and that need to be proactive and just keep moving forward, even though you're just, I mean, that could be arguably a scared decision, but it's also a very necessary decision in order to.
It's actually a brave decision.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of, I guess it was kind of scared, but it was also like, pulling every single lever available to me. And one of those levers was, people were talking about payment plans. So it's like, maybe I don't need the payment plan today, but it's available now. So I got to say yes to that now, because I might need it later and it may not be available later. Yeah. And then you can still, build that goodwill by making all those on-time payments, but at least you have those options available to you when they're offered.
That's it, yeah, and that's how you help yourself as a business owner. And it's about, I love what you're saying about just having all your numbers available, having your financial statements available, your tax returns filed on time, everything clean, because those are the preparatory steps, or those are kind of the good business steps that you should be taking, so that when these unexpected events do happen, you are in the best possible way to respond. Best possible place to respond to them, and take advantage of the emergency funding that's available and the grants. And your landlord will be happier with you because he's seen your track record and and what you're capable of. So, and that kind of rolls nicely into obviously one of my favorite subjects, which is around financial preparedness and knowing your numbers and the importance of knowing your numbers and becoming financially confident. I mean, were you always comfortable with numbers? Is this something that you had to kind of learn and befriend? And maybe you can speak a little bit about your journey there and kind of echo my, kind of push that this is such an important area for all business owners to be.
Yeah, well, and our colleague Juliana just put her information in the chat. My very first thing that I subbed out when I started my business was my books, because I knew it wasn't a strength of mine and I knew I didn't like it. And by the way, as an entrepreneur, sometimes when we don't like things, we choose not to do them, or we choose not to do them very well. And so I recognized that it wasn't a strength of mine. And so I paid someone to do it, and I still pay someone to do it. And nothing is more important than your numbers. You cannot run a business without your numbers. Being an entrepreneur is a lot of instinct and gut and reactions, but you need to have the numbers at the end. And if you don't have your numbers, you don't know, you're flying blind. So, a couple, just like basic, fundamentals, the way we do it is I have a bookkeeper who runs my QuickBooks. We reconcile our credit card transactions every week. I have a financial dashboard that I fill out every week that tracks all of our different bank accounts. It tracks accounts receivable, so I make sure that I'm getting my money and I'm not cash flowing for our clients. We look at what kind of hours the team put in to make sure that we're doing our right mix of like overhead internal work versus paid client work. So every day, not every day, every week, we're closing out our numbers and we're watching it. We make sure to close our monthly books in the first week of the next month. And then we have our CPA who oversees all of it, who does our tax planning and all that kind of stuff. So it's not my favorite thing to do, but like, this is my unique position in our company, is to make sure that our financials are really clean, really up to date. They're not, rosy or whatever. It just like, those are the guideposts that I can use to continue to steer our ship. And because we had all of that in place already, I didn't have to spend time building it. It already existed. I just needed to continue using our tools. And that meant that we could pivot our business during COVID. I already knew how to make it profitable, and I knew our different profit centers. And I could look and say, okay, this is the revenue hole we need to fill because of in-person events. How the hell am I going to do that? Great. Brianne, go learn Zoom. Okay, we have a 600-person 4-day conference in 6 weeks. Cecily, go watch every single webinar on how the hell to do a virtual conference. So I knew like what was the gap that we had to fill. And then we were able to immediately, like, proactively become the experts in those fields to fill those revenue gaps. And again, like, that investment was really expensive, really, really expensive, but we had to become experts, fill that knowledge gap in order to fill that revenue gap so that we could keep the doors open during COVID.
Yeah, and then you put yourself there as a leader in your industry, because again, you're being proactive and taking those steps. I want to just touch on pricing because I think that's an area again where we all have some nervousness about putting our rates to a certain level and oh my God, am I going to get clients? Am I going to lose clients? Am I still going to be competitive? Can you speak to kind of how you price and sort of charging what you're worth?
Don't compete on price. Don't do it. Don't compete on price. Compete on quality. Compete. Honestly, our unique value proposition is who we are. It's our approach. It's that we're kind of sassy. It's that we're really innovative. And so that's what people are paying for. And in fact, we raised our prices during the pandemic. So if you haven't raised your prices yet, raise your prices. And kind of the pandemic was a nice little excuse. The cost of doing business is going up. So raise your prices. And again, we're really leaning into our value proposition. If you like the way we show up, if you like that we're sassy and also that we're casual and that we're collaborative, that's how we're competing, not on price. And by the way, I did compete on price. The cheapest clients are the worst clients. They're the worst. They in my 10 years, it is our lowest revenue clients who paid late, who tried to get the most out of us, who tried to do the scope creep on the contracts. And I'm seeing everyone sound off in the chat, echoing what I'm saying. It is scary to be expensive, but you also need to get out of the pockets of your clients. Who are you to say what they can and can't afford? And so you need, and to, part of it is I look at, again, going back to employee retention and paying a thriving wage. What do I need to charge in order to make sure that my employees are being treated and compensated the way that they deserve to, and in a way that they'll stick around and do excellent work for our clients? So it really is this cycle of I need to show up as an advocate for my employees so that they can show up as an advocate for our clients. And we shut down during the pandemic. We shut down a whole line of revenue because it was our least profitable, highest work line of revenue. And my goodness, that was terrifying to actively say, hey, this chunk of money that comes in every single month, we're going to say no to that. But the only way we could open up these higher space for a higher revenue or more clients that are higher revenue is to let go of this whole chunk of money. And so it's scary, but that again speaks back to just having your foundations nailed, having a little bit of cash in the bank. Because we had our numbers nailed, we were able to get a ton of idle money, and that's just our little safety net now. If you have idle money, let it sit in the bank, let it help you grow your company. Don't spend it on anything crazy, but that's your safety net. So we're using that to grow our company. We're hiring for 2 positions right now, and we're actually hiring out in front of getting the work to help. Our team is burnt out, but to help sort of combat that and to stop asking them to stretch, because we've all stretched too much. But we have this incredible financial safety net that we're going to use really responsibly. So talk to your trusted professionals about what that looks like for your individual business. But
yeah. So so much good stuff here, and we're already moving through our time, but let's look ahead 10 years. So you've 10 years in the bank. What would be 2 or 3 amazing things that you'd love to achieve in the next 10 years?
I am really stuck on this vision of being the lynda.com for consulting. And I know that's a dated reference now, but those of us locals, we all know somebody who got that dream Lynda job, and you're like, oh my God, you landed at the mothership, congratulations. And so I want Visionality to be a leader for other consulting organizations in terms of a thriving wage, company culture, work-life balance, and really show, Scooter agrees, The other thing that I'm incredibly passionate about is the way that we cut parents out of the workplace. And I use the word parent, it's often mothers, but the pandemic has proved to us that we can work from home. And there are a few primary reasons why parents aren't able to show up in a traditional work environment, but working from home, flexibility, childcare, these are all very solvable problems. And everyone thought I was nuts before the pandemic that we ran a remote company. So we've been remote since the beginning, like for 10 years. How do you know, Scooter is getting a bone. How do you know that your employees are doing their work? And I'm like, because they get it done, like that's how I know that they're doing their work. And by the way, they work harder and they work smarter and they have greater comfort in their life because they can walk 10 feet away and change the laundry, or they can take an hour in the afternoon and pick their kids up from school. And it was really interesting, during the pandemic, one of our employees, who's a mom of 3 littles, was really hesitant. She didn't want to come to our team meetings because she has 3 little kids who are Zoom schooling, and she was afraid that our other employees who aren't parents would feel like she wasn't working as hard as them, or she's so distracted or whatever. And we said, no, you being a parent makes you a valuable asset to this company. You bring a different skill set, a different approach, a different perspective, a different background. And this is the difference between equity and equality. Equality means, we all have the same distractions or the same background. Equity is giving each individual team member the tools that they individually need to show up as their best self.
Yeah.
And for one of our employees, that's that sometimes she hops out of the Zoom to get someone on a new class, or like to get someone a snack. Who cares? It's not a big deal. And it just has frustrated me for 10 years that we allow this system to continue that cuts out a ginormous chunk of our workforce who are just incredible. I can't imagine running our company without the parents that we've had work for us for the last 10 years. And so like, we're really encouraging people, companies, to not go back to normal. Normal was bad for a lot of people. Normal cut a lot of people out or minimized the way that they could show up in society. Don't go back to normal. Take the lessons that we learned during the pandemic and build them into your business plan going forward. I promise, if you used to run a traditional office and you're thinking about bringing people back to the office, ask your employees, what would you prefer? And I'm gonna guarantee that they want to stay remote or at least hybrid. And what we're seeing right now with the great resignation is that it's the companies who are requiring their employees to come back physically into an office. They're the ones primarily who are looking for different jobs.
As I look around my office. All right, last question. Thanksgiving's coming up next week. What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful
from Scooter.
I'm primarily grateful for Scooter. He's my little buddy. I'm grateful for the people in my life, and as an entrepreneur, it's very lonely. We have unique challenges. And so I'm grateful for my tribe of entrepreneurs who help me show up every day, even when it's hard. I'm incredibly grateful for my team. I could not, we wouldn't be here without them. They support me. They help me show up. They remind me that I get to be a human too, and I'm an employee 2 and I get to take care of myself. You know, we've all had some things pop up during the pandemic, and you know, it's so fun. During the pandemic, we instituted this policy that any person can kick any other person out of the office if they need a mental health day. And it's just this incredible thing to watch where, you know, someone will share with someone else, "Ooh, I'm really struggling today, you know, something happened with my family," like whatever, I'm just tired. And then the person they confided in will announce to the team in our chat, "I'm kicking Emily out of the office today." And then the entire team jumps in and says, "Great, what can I take off your plate? You know, is there anything in your brain that means that you won't be able to really relax and take care of yourself today?" And it is the most beautiful thing just to like really lean into that team and know that we've got each other's backs. And like, it's hard, you know, we all had a full day of work planned, but you know, having this company safety net to be humans, to recognize that we have good and bad days, and we're actually better as a team if we step back when we're having those bad days and really take care of ourselves and fill our tanks, we're able to come back even better the next day and like really lean into that work. So it's the people. It's always the people.
It's always the people and the dogs and the people and the dogs and the cats.
I mean, he's a real boy. They're
he's a human.
They count as people. All the animals.
All right. Well, we are out of interview time. So again, Emily, thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing all these amazing perspectives and you know, the wisdom and experience that you've gained over the last 10 years. And again, encourage everybody to check out Emily's blogs and all the resources on her website. But what we're going to do now is go into breakout rooms. I'll try and bring you back a few minutes early in case there's some questions for Emily, but I wanted to give her the opportunity to just speak for as long as possible. But I also want to give you guys the opportunity to get in and network in the breakout rooms. So we will reconvene in about 15 minutes. And again, thank you, Emily. See you soon.